The first encounter. The Galactic Dominion, an interstellar alliance of advanced alien species, had long dismissed Earth as a primitive backwater planet. But that dismissal would soon prove to be a grave mistake. Commander Elias Grant, a hardened veteran of Earth's newly formed United Terran Defense Force, UTDF, stood on the bridge of Resolute, the flagship of Earth's modest fleet. Reports of a Dominion invasion fleet heading toward a vulnerable Terran colony had reached Earth, and the response would set the stage for humanity's fight for survival. On the desolate frontier planet of Vega Prime, settlers worked tirelessly to build a home in the harsh alien wilderness. Life was tough, but humanity's resolve was tougher. When scanners detected the arrival of Dominion ships, panic set in. The settlers sent a desperate call for help to Earth, fully expecting their cries to go unanswered. After all, Earth had only just begun exploring the stars. Commander Grant, however, had other plans. The Dominion had never faced humans in direct combat, and they underestimated humanity's ingenuity. Aboard the Resolute, Grant delivered his orders with a calm intensity. "We'll meet them at Vega Prime. They think we're weak. Let's show them what humans can do." The Dominion fleet, led by Admiral Xeris, consisted of sleek, heavily armed warships bristling with energy weapons. They arrived at Vega Prime confident in their superiority, only to find an unfamiliar Terran fleet waiting for them. The Dominion forces sneered at the sight of humanity's smaller ships, assuming their primitive-looking vessels would crumble under Dominion firepower. But these were no ordinary ships. Earth's engineers had developed kinetic railguns and advanced stealth technologies that could outmaneuver even the most advanced Dominion systems. When the first Dominion ships moved to engage, the Resolute launched its railgun salvo. Massive projectiles tore through Dominion shields, punching clean through their hulls. The aliens were caught off guard by the sheer ferocity of the human counterattack. "Focus fire on their flyships," Grant barked. His crew moved with precision, their hands steady despite the chaos of battle. The bridge of the Resolute was filled with the hum of consoles and the steady voice of Grant, keeping his crew focused. Admiral Xeris, aboard the Dominion flagship Eternus, watched in shock as 3 of his ships were obliterated within minutes. "How?" he growled, his mandibles clicking in frustration. These creatures were supposed to be insignificant. As the battle raged on, Grant's strategy became clear. Human ships exploited their agility, luring the Dominion into traps and decimating their forces with pinpoint strikes. By the time the Dominion forces attempted to retreat, it was too late. The Resolute and its fleet had cut off their escape route. The first victory for humanity was hard-fought and costly. Smoke filled the air aboard the Resolute, and casualties were mounting. But Grant stood resolute. This was more than a battle. It was humanity's declaration to the galaxy. "Send this message to the Dominion," Grant ordered. His voice was cold and deliberate. "Earth is not yours to take. If you want a war, we'll give you one. The Dominion strikes back." The aftermath of the Vega Prime battle sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Dominion, an empire that had subjugated countless worlds with ease, now faced an unthinkable truth. Humanity was a threat. For centuries, the Dominion had reigned supreme, its vast armies and fleets unmatched. But this new species, these humans, had fought with a ferocity and cunning that shattered their illusions of invincibility. Admiral Xeris, humiliated and enraged by the defeat, stood on the bridge of the Eternus, which had barely escaped the carnage at Vega Prime. His claws scraped against the holographic table as he studied a map of the Terran colonies. "These creatures dare to challenge us," he snarled. "They will be crushed. Prepare the fleet for a full-scale invasion." Back on Earth, the United Terran Defense Force braced for the inevitable counterattack. Commander Elias Grant convened a war council aboard the Resolute. The mood in the room was grim. Earth had won a battle, but the cost had been high. Several ships were severely damaged, and ammunition supplies were dangerously low. Grant addressed his officers, his voice steady but heavy with responsibility. The Dominion underestimated us once. They won't make that mistake again. The next time they come, they'll bring everything they have. We need to be ready." His words were met with nods of determination. Among those present was Dr. Nadia Volkov, the brilliant scientist behind Earth's advanced railgun technology. She stepped forward, her holographic tablet displaying a new design. "We've analyzed the data from Vega Prime," she began. "The Dominion's energy shields are effective against plasma and lasers, but they're vulnerable to kinetic impact. If we can scale up our railguns, we might stand a chance against their larger ships." Grant's eyes narrowed. "How long do you need?" 2 weeks, Nadia replied. "But we'll need more resources, rare metals, advanced alloys, and volunteers." Grant knew what that meant. Human lives would be the currency of this war. "You'll have what you need," he said firmly. "We'll buy you time." The Dominion's invasion. 2 weeks later, the Dominion launched their retaliation. A fleet of nearly 100 warships descended on the Terran colony of New Horizon, a lush world rich in resources. The Eternus led the charge, its massive energy cannons carving through the planet's orbital defenses like a blade through cloth. Dominion ground troops, towering insectoid warriors clad in gleaming armor, poured onto the surface, their plasma rifles burning through anything in their path. But humanity had prepared. Hidden in the dense jungles and rocky outcroppings of New Horizon, Terran forces lay in wait. Commander Grant had anticipated the attack, and his forces were ready to make the Dominion pay for every inch of ground they tried to take. In the thick of the jungle, Captain Sarah Moreno led a team of elite Terran soldiers armed with prototype Gauss rifles. These weapons, developed in secret by Dr. Volkov, fired hypervelocity rounds capable of piercing Dominion armor. Moreno's team moved like ghosts, their adaptive camouflage blending seamlessly with the foliage. The Dominion advance was methodical, their soldiers sweeping the jungle with plasma fire. But they were unprepared for humanity's unconventional tactics. Explosives rigged to trees rained shrapnel down on the invaders, and Gauss rifle fire punched through their ranks with deadly precision. "Hold your fire until they're in the kill zone," Moreno whispered over her comms. Her team waited in silence, the tension palpable. When the Dominion vanguard entered the clearing below, Moreno gave the signal. Now, the jungle erupted in chaos. Explosions tore through the Dominion lines, and human soldiers emerged from hidden positions, raining fire down on the disoriented invaders. The Dominion's superior numbers counted for little in the face of humanity's guerrilla tactics. They fought back with ferocity, but the dense terrain worked against them, their heavy armor slowing them down. Admiral Xeris, observing the battle from orbit, clenched his fists in frustration. "How are these primitives doing this?" he roared. "Deploy the drones." The turning point. In the skies above New Horizon, swarms of Dominion attack drones descended. Their sleek, insect-like forms darted through the air, firing precision plasma bursts at human positions. On the ground, the tide began to turn. Human casualties mounted as the relentless assault pushed them back. Grant, monitoring the battle from the Resolute, knew the situation was dire. He turned to Dr. Volkov, who had joined him on the bridge. "Do we have the prototypes ready?" Volkov hesitated. "They're untested, but yes." "Good," Grant said. "Launch them." Moments later, the Resolute deployed humanity's latest weapon, the Valkyrie-class combat drones. These sleek, angular machines were equipped with advanced AI, railgun technology, and adaptive camouflage. Unlike the Dominion's drones, the Valkyries could think independently, adapting to changing battlefield conditions. The arrival of the Valkyries was a game-changer. They tore through the Dominion drone swarms with ruthless efficiency, their railguns punching holes in the alien machines. On the ground, Moreno's team regrouped, using the chaos in the skies to launch a counterattack. "Push forward," Moreno shouted, leading her soldiers into the fray. The human forces fought with a ferocity born of desperation, and the Dominion began to falter. For the first time, Their soldiers showed signs of fear. Humanity's resolve. As the battle raged on, Grant issued a bold order. "Prepare the orbital strike cannon," he commanded. The Resolute's main weapon, a massive railgun capable of firing projectiles at near-light speed, had been reserved as a last resort. Now it was humanity's best chance to turn the tide. The cannon's targeting systems locked onto the Eternus, and the ship's crew braced for the recoil. With a deafening roar, the cannon fired, sending a projectile hurtling toward the Dominion flagship. The impact was catastrophic, tearing through the Eternus's shields and hull. On the bridge of the Dominion flagship, Admiral Xeris staggered as explosions rocked the ship. He turned to his officers, his voice filled with desperation. "Retreat. Order the fleet to retreat." The remaining Dominion ships jumped to hyperspace, abandoning their ground forces to their fate. On New Horizon, the human soldiers watched as the alien invaders began to surrender. For the second time, humanity had defied the odds and emerged victorious. But Grant knew this was only the beginning. The Dominion would return, stronger and more determined than ever. Humanity's fight for survival had just begun, and there was no turning back. The secrets of the Dominion. The victory on New Horizon had bought humanity precious time, but Commander Elias Grant knew the respite would be brief. The Dominion's retreat was a tactical move, not a surrender. They would regroup, analyze humanity's tactics, and return with overwhelming force. Grant's thoughts lingered on the shattered remains of the Dominion flagship, Eternus. He had witnessed something unusual during its destruction, something that might hold the key to turning the tide of the war. On board the Resolute, the command center buzzed with activity. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair the ship's systems, while analysts pored over combat data. Dr. Nadia Volkov stood beside Grant, her brow furrowed as she examined a holographic projection of the destroyed Eternus. "There," she said, pointing to a flickering segment of the recording. "Do you see that?" Grant leaned in, studying the footage. Amidst the chaos of the Dominion ship's destruction, a smaller craft had ejected from the wreckage. Unlike the angular, heavily armored Dominion vessels, this craft was sleek and almost organic in design, pulsing with an eerie blue light. "What is that?" Grant asked. Nadia shook her head. "I don't know, but it doesn't match any known Dominion designs. If it's some kind of prototype or command vessel, we need to know what they're hiding." Grant nodded, his jaw tightening. "Prep a recon team. If that craft landed on New Horizon, we're going after it." The hunt begins. 2 days later, the recon team assembled in the hangar of the Resolute. Captain Sarah Moreno, fresh from the jungle battle, led the squad. Her team consisted of hand-picked soldiers, each equipped with the latest stealth armor and advanced weaponry. Their mission was simple: track the Dominion escape craft, secure its cargo, and return with any intelligence that could help Earth in the war. As the Resolute orbited New Horizon, the team descended in a dropship, gliding through the atmosphere like a shadow. The craft touched down in a remote region of the planet, far from the battle-scarred jungles. This was an arid, desolate expanse of rocky canyons and windswept plateaus, a perfect place to hide. Moreno's team disembarked, their boots crunching on the cracked earth. The air was dry and thin, and the only sounds were the distant howls of alien winds. "Keep it tight," Moreno ordered, her voice low. "We're not alone out here." The team moved in formation, their adaptive camouflage blending seamlessly with the landscape. Advanced drones scouted ahead, mapping the terrain and searching for signs of the Dominion craft. Hours passed as they trekked through the canyons, the oppressive silence broken only by the occasional crackle of their comms. Finally, one of the drones pinged an alert. "Captain," a soldier called out, pointing to a holographic display on his wrist. "We've got something. Looks like a Dominion signal." Moreno examined the feed. The drone had detected a faint energy signature emanating from a cave system nestled within the cliffs. "That's our target," she said. "Let's move." The discovery. The entrance to the cave was narrow and jagged, barely wide enough for two soldiers to pass through side by side. Inside, the air grew cooler, and an unnatural blue light flickered in the distance. Moreno signaled for silence as the team advanced, their rifles raised. As they ventured deeper, the source of the light became clear. The Dominion escape craft rested in the cavern's center, its sleek, organic design glowing faintly. Strange symbols etched into its surface pulsed rhythmically, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "What the hell is this?" one soldier muttered. Moreno approached the craft cautiously. "Volkov's going to want to look at this," she said, gesturing for the team to secure the area. "Scan it, but don't touch anything." While the soldiers worked, Moreno's eyes were drawn to a hatch on the side of the craft. It was open, and a faint trail of dark fluid led from it deeper into the cave. "Something, or someone, came out of here," she said. "Fan out and search the area." The team split into pairs, their movements slow and deliberate. Moreno and her second-in-command, Lieutenant Harris, followed the trail. The fluid glistened in the dim light, leading them to a smaller chamber at the cave's rear. What they found sent a chill down their spines. A Dominion officer lay sprawled on the ground, his body riddled with strange, blackened wounds. His eyes were wide with terror, his clawed hands frozen in a defensive posture. Around him, the walls were covered in the same pulsing symbols as the craft. Harris knelt beside the body, scanning it with a handheld device. "These wounds, they're not from any weapon I've seen," he said. "It's like something burned him from the inside out." Moreno's hand tightened on her rifle. Whatever did this might still be here. "Stay sharp." The threat unveiled. As the team regrouped around the craft, a low, resonant hum filled the air. The pulsing light on the craft intensified, and the symbols on the walls began to shift and writhe as if alive. "Captain, something's happening," a soldier shouted. Before Moreno could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was humanoid but distinctly alien, tall and slender, with glowing veins of blue light coursing beneath translucent skin. Its eyes, like twin stars, fixed on the humans with an intensity that made their blood run cold. "Hold your fire," Moreno ordered, though her instincts screamed at her to shoot. The creature raised a hand, and the hum grew louder. The air around it seemed to distort, shimmering with an otherworldly energy. Then, in a voice that resonated in their minds rather than their ears, it spoke. "You should not have come here." Moreno stepped forward, her weapon still trained on the figure. "Who are you? What is this place?" The creature tilted its head, as if considering her question. "I am a warden, the last of my kind. This craft is not Dominion. It is a relic of a war far older than your species, a war that should have stayed buried." Before Moreno could ask more, the cave shook violently. The Dominion, tracking the signal from their escape craft, had sent reinforcements. The ground trembled as explosions rocked the cliffs above. The warden's glowing eyes narrowed. "They come for the relic. If they take it, your kind will not survive." Moreno turned to her team, marking orders. "Defensive positions. Hold them off." As the Dominion forces descended into the cave, Moreno realized the truth. This relic wasn't just a weapon. It was a key to something far greater. And now, humanity's survival hinged on keeping it out of the Dominion's hands. The warden's warning. The cave trembled under the relentless assault from Dominion reinforcements. Dust and debris rained from above as the alien troops descended into the depths, their plasma weapons illuminating the jagged rock walls. Captain Sarah Moreno's heart pounded, but her focus remained unshaken. This was no ordinary battle. The survival of her team, and possibly humanity, rested on the choices made in the next few minutes. The warden, the glowing, ethereal figure who claimed to guard the ancient craft, stood motionless, its luminous veins pulsing in sync with the strange symbols on the cave walls. Moreno turned to the alien. "If this thing is as important as you say, we need to know what it is. Why are the Dominion after it?" The warden's voice echoed in their minds, an eerie and resonant sound that bypassed speech entirely. This is no mere weapon. It is a containment vessel for a power that must never be unleashed. The Dominion seeks to harness it, but they do not understand the consequences. Before Moreno could press for more information, the first wave of Dominion soldiers stormed the cave entrance. These insectoid warriors were larger and more heavily armored than the ones her team had fought on New Horizon. Their plasma rifles spat searing bolts of energy, forcing the humans to dive for cover. "Hold your ground," Moreno shouted, raising her Gauss rifle. Her team returned fire, their weapons hypervelocity rounds punching through the Dominion armor with devastating precision. The Warden stepped forward, raising its hand. A shimmering barrier of light materialized across the entrance, halting the Dominion advance. Plasma bolts disintegrated on contact, the energy absorbed harmlessly into the barrier. The alien turned to Moreno, its glowing eyes narrowing. "You cannot win this fight by conventional means. The relic's power must be moved to safety." "How?" Moreno demanded, her voice tinged with frustration. "We're pinned down, and they've got us outnumbered." The Warden extended its hand toward the craft. The symbols on its surface flared brightly, and the vessel emitted a low, resonant hum. A compartment opened, revealing a sphere of swirling energy encased in a crystalline shell. The sight of it sent a chill through Moreno and her team. "This is the core," the Warden explained. "It is both the heart and the lock of the relic. If the Dominion obtains it, they will unleash a force that will consume your kind. And theirs." Moreno hesitated, staring at the core. "You're saying we need to take this thing? Won't that make us their new target?" "Yes," the Warden said simply. "But better in your hands than theirs. The fight for the core." Moreno weighed the decision for only a moment before nodding. "We don't have a choice. Harris, secure the core." Lieutenant Harris approached the craft cautiously, his gloved hands trembling as he lifted the crystalline sphere. The moment he touched it, the cave trembled again, and the symbols on the walls flared brighter. The Warden's eyes narrowed. "They will know. Their leader can feel the core's energy. Prepare yourselves." The Dominion soldiers outside redoubled their assault, and the shimmering barrier began to falter. More plasma bolts slammed against it, creating fractures in the protective light. "Captain, we're not going to hold them much longer," one of her soldiers called out. "Fall back to defensive positions near the artifact," Moreno ordered. "We make our stand here." The humans formed a tight perimeter around the Warden and the core. Dominion troops surged through the crumbling barrier, their chittering war cries echoing off the cave walls. Moreno's Gauss rifle barked, each shot finding its mark as the battle descended into brutal, close-quarters combat. Despite their superior numbers, the Dominion forces struggled against the humans' unrelenting determination. The adaptive camouflage of Moreno's team made them hard to track, and their advanced weapons tore through the invaders' ranks. But the cost was high. Several soldiers fell, their bodies consumed by plasma fire. A desperate escape. Just as the situation seemed untenable, the Warden raised its hands again. The cave trembled, and a new passage opened in the rock behind the humans. "This way," it said. "The core must not fall into their hands." "Go," Moreno shouted to her team. "I'll cover the rear." Her soldiers hesitated but followed orders, retreating down the newly formed tunnel with the core in tow. Moreno and a handful of others held the line, their weapons blazing as they bought precious time. The Warden moved beside her, its ethereal form shimmering. It extended its hand, and a surge of energy rippled through the cave. Dominion soldiers were flung backward, their weapons clattering to the ground. "You are brave, human," the Warden said, "but bravery alone will not save you. Go now." Moreno nodded, firing one last shot before retreating into the tunnel. The Warden remained behind, its glowing form illuminating the cave as it faced the Dominion troops. The last thing Moreno saw before the tunnel collapsed behind her was the Warden unleashing a blinding wave of energy, engulfing the invaders. A race against time. The tunnel led the humans to an exit high on a rocky ridge overlooking the desolate plains of New Horizon. Harris cradled the core, his expression tense. "What now, Captain?" he asked. Moreno scanned the horizon. In the distance, Dominion dropships were closing in. "We need extraction," she said, activating her comms. "Resolute, this is Moreno. We have the package, but we're under pursuit. Request immediate evac." "Copy that," came Grant's voice. "We're sending a dropship your way. Hold tight." The humans moved quickly, navigating the treacherous terrain as Dominion forces closed in. The core's pulsing light made concealment difficult, and the sound of pursuing troops grew louder with each passing moment. Finally, the dropship appeared on the horizon, its engines roaring as it descended toward their location. But just as it landed, Dominion forces crested the ridge behind them, opening fire. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, and one soldier cried out as he was hit. "Get on board," Moreno shouted, returning fire as her team scrambled onto the dropship. Harris handed the core to a soldier already aboard, then turned back to help cover their retreat. The Dominion forces pressed closer, their sheer numbers overwhelming. Moreno and Harris fired relentlessly, their Gauss rifles overheating as they bought time for their team. "Go, Captain," Harris yelled. "I'll hold them off." "You're not dying here, Harris," Moreno snapped, grabbing his arm and pulling him toward the dropship. The last human barely made it aboard as the dropship lifted off, its weapons firing on the advancing Dominion forces. As they ascended, Moreno looked out the window, her heart heavy. Below, the Dominion troops regrouped, their commander glaring up at the escaping humans with a look of pure hatred. The warning. Back aboard the Resolute, the core was placed in a secure containment chamber. Dr. Volkov immediately began analyzing it, her expression a mix of awe and apprehension. This isn't just a weapon," she murmured. "It's alive, in a way. We need to be very careful." Grant joined them, his face grim. "What did we just steal?" Moreno recounted the warden's warning, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "Whatever this thing is, it's dangerous. And now, we're at the center of the storm." Grant nodded, his expression hard. "Then we'll do what humans do best. Fight. If the Dominion wants this core, they'll have to take it from us." As the Resolute prepared for its next move, the core pulsed with a faint rhythmic light. Somewhere in the darkness of space, forces far older and more powerful than the Dominion stirred. The humans had taken their first step into a larger, more dangerous galaxy, and there was no turning back. Would you like to continue with Part 5, where we delve into the growing threats and deeper? The Awakening. The Resolute hummed with tension. The core, now housed in a reinforced containment chamber deep within the ship, pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, casting eerie shadows on the metallic walls. Dr. Nadia Volkov stood over her console, her fingers flying across holographic controls as she monitored the artifact's energy readings. The numbers were staggering, far beyond anything humanity's technology had ever encountered. Commander Elias Grant entered the lab, his presence steadying. "What are we dealing with, Doctor?" Volkov didn't look up. "Something ancient, Commander. Its energy signature suggests it's not just a power source. It's a key. The symbols on its surface are some kind of containment mechanism, designed to keep whatever is inside locked away." Grant crossed his arms, his gaze fixed on the swirling energy within the core. "Locked away from what?" Volkov hesitated. "The warden called it a force, but I'm starting to think it's more than that. This could be an intelligence, something alive." Grant's jaw tightened. If it's alive, then it's listening. What happens if the Dominion activates it? "They won't need to," Volkov replied grimly. "If we keep probing it without understanding, we could wake it ourselves." The Dominion's move. Meanwhile, aboard the Dominion dreadnought Sovereign Blade, Supreme Commander Zykra studied the battle reports from New Horizon. Unlike Admiral Xeris, whose arrogance had led to defeat, Zykra was a cold strategist. Her angular, insectoid frame exuded authority as she leaned over a tactical display, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. A junior officer approached, bowing low. "Commander, our scouts have confirmed the humans have taken the relic aboard their flagship. They are heading toward their homeworld." Zykra straightened, her multifaceted eyes narrowing. "Fools, they have no idea what they possess. The core is not a weapon they can wield. It is a harbinger." The officer hesitated before speaking. "Shall we intercept, Commander?" Zykra's mandibles clicked as she considered. "No, not yet. Let them bring it to their homeworld. The core's awakening will consume them, and we will reclaim the ruins." She turned to the display, where a holographic image of Earth rotated slowly. "Prepare the fleet. If the humans survive the core's awakening, we will ensure they wish they hadn't." The signal. Back aboard the Resolute, the core's behavior grew more erratic. Its pulsing light intensified, and strange, harmonic vibrations resonated throughout the ship. Crew members reported hearing whispers in their minds, words they couldn't quite understand but felt compelled to listen to. Grant called an emergency meeting in the command center. Captain Sarah Moreno, freshly recovered from the New Horizon mission, was among those present. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, sensing the unease in her fellow officers. "We have a problem," Volkov began, projecting a hologram of the core. The symbols on its surface now moved constantly, shifting into patterns that no human mind could decipher. "The core is broadcasting something, some kind of signal." "To who?" Moreno asked, her voice tense. Volkov shook her head. "I don't know. But the Dominion likely isn't the only one who's listening." Grant leaned forward. "You're saying there could be others out there? Something older than the Dominion?" "Not just older," Volkov replied. "More dangerous. The Warden mentioned a war, one that predates any records we've uncovered. Whatever that war was, it involved powers beyond anything we faced." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Grant spoke. "Then we need to stop the signal." "It's not that simple," Volkov said. "The core isn't just transmitting. It's responding. It's interacting with the signal it's receiving. Shutting it down could destabilize it completely." "What does that mean in plain English?" Moreno asked. Volkov took a deep breath. "If we're not careful, we could release whatever it's containing." The awakening begins. As the Resolute approached Earth, the situation grew worse. The whispers in the crew's minds became louder, more coherent. They spoke of endless darkness, of stars consumed by fire, of an ancient hunger waiting to be unleashed. The crew grew restless, some reporting vivid nightmares that left them shaken and pale. Grant paced the bridge, his calm exterior masking the storm inside. "How long until we reach Earth?" 3 hours, Commander," replied the navigation officer. "Make it 2, Grant ordered. "We need to get this thing into a secure facility before it." An alarm blared, cutting him off. "Core breach detected," came Volkov's voice over the comms. "Containment protocols failing." Grant bolted from the bridge, Moreno at his side. They raced through the corridors toward the lab, where Volkov and her team were scrambling to stabilize the core. The energy surrounding it had intensified, lashing out in arcs of light that scorched the walls and consoles. "We're losing control," Volkov shouted. "The core is reacting to something external." "Can you stabilize it?" Grant demanded. "I'm trying," Volkov replied, her hands flying over the controls. "But it's like it doesn't want to be contained anymore." Suddenly, the energy coalesced, forming a towering figure in the center of the lab. It was humanoid but abstract, its features shifting like smoke caught in a gale. Its eyes burned with an intense blue light, and its voice boomed in their minds. "I am a Krail, the keeper of silence. Who dares awaken me?" A Krail's warning. The room froze as the figure surveyed them, its presence oppressive and overwhelming. Grant stepped forward, his voice firm despite the fear gripping his chest. "We didn't awaken you. We found the core and kept it from the Dominion." Acrail tilted its head, as if amused. The Dominion, pitiful creatures, scavengers of forgotten power. They seek what they cannot control. What are you? Moreno asked, her rifle raised but trembling. I am a fragment of what once was, Acrail replied. A remnant of the Great War, when the stars burned and the void screamed. The core is a prison, a tomb for those who would unmake all creation. Volkov's voice was barely a whisper. What's inside the core? Acrail's gaze turned to her, and its voice grew darker. The Harbinger, a being of pure entropy. It devours light, life, and time itself. If it is released, not even the Dominion will be spared. Grant exchanged a look with Moreno. Why is the core reacting now? Because you brought it here, Acrail said. This place, your homeworld, is rich with life. And life is what the Harbinger hungers for. The signal draws it closer, feeding its strength. What do we do? Grant demanded. Acrail stepped closer, its form flickering. You must make a choice. Destroy the core and risk unleashing the Harbinger, or take it far from here, to a place where its signal cannot be heard. Grant's mind raced. Both options carried immense risks, but before he could decide, the ship shuddered violently. Commander, came a voice over the comms. Dominion ships incoming. They found us. The battle for humanity. The Resolute erupted into chaos as Dominion warships emerged from hyperspace, weapons blazing. The bridge buzzed with activity as Grant and Moreno raced to take command. Shields up, Grant ordered. Return fire. Keep them away from the core. Volkov remained in the lab, desperately trying to stabilize the core as Acrail stood silently, watching. The alien's voice filled her mind. Your species shows promise, but your survival depends on courage and sacrifice. As the Resolute fought to evade the Dominion, Acrail turned to Volkov. There is one way to ensure the Harbinger is never released. What is it? She asked. You must activate the core's failsafe, Acrail said. It will destroy the relic, and everything within 1,000 kilometers. Volkov froze. That would kill us all. Yes, Acrail said, its voice devoid of emotion, but it would save your world. The battle raged outside, and time was running out. Grant's voice crackled over the comms. Volkov, what's happening down there? She glanced at Acrail, then at the core, its light growing brighter. We have to decide, Commander. Do we destroy it, or risk everything? The point of no return. The Resolute shook violently as Dominion warships hammered its shields. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles, and alarms blared incessantly. Commander Elias Grant gripped the edge of the command console, his knuckles white. On the screen before him, the Dominion fleet swarmed like locusts, their sleek, angular ships outnumbering the human vessel 5-1. Shields at 40%, Commander, called the tactical officer. We can't take much more of this. Grant's mind raced, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on his shoulders. In the lab below, the core's containment had almost completely failed, and the ancient entity calling itself Acrail had issued its ominous ultimatum. Activate the core's failsafe and destroy the ship, or risk the Harbinger's awakening. Either choice could doom them all. The relic's last warning. Dr. Nadia Volkov's hands trembled as she worked at the lab's console, desperately trying to stabilize the core. Energy arced from its crystalline shell, scorching the walls and melting nearby equipment. Acrail's towering figure remained still, its glowing eyes fixed on her. There must be another way, Volkov said through gritted teeth. We can't just kill everyone. Acrail's voice filled the room, resonating with an almost mechanical finality. You misunderstand, human. There is no escape from the Harbinger's hunger. Delay only increases the cost. Captain Sarah Moreno, still recovering from the firefight on New Horizon, stepped into the lab, her weapon slung over her shoulder. Doctor, we need an answer. Now. Volkov turned to Moreno, sweat streaking her face. If we activate the failsafe, The core and everything near it will be obliterated. But if we don't, the Harbinger could wake, and then it won't matter. Moreno glanced at the pulsing core, then back at Volkov. What does Grant think? He wants options, Volkov replied. And I'm running out of time to give him any. The core flared suddenly, its light blinding. The ship lurched as another barrage from the Dominion fleet struck home. Akrail's voice cut through the chaos. You must decide. Delay seals your fate. Dominion boarding party. The Dominion, sensing their victory, deployed boarding pods to cripple the Resolute from within. The sleek insectoid craft pierced the ship's hull, disgorging squads of heavily armed alien soldiers. In the lower decks, firefights erupted as human Marines engaged the invaders. Moreno's comm crackled to life. Captain, Dominion forces have breached the lower corridors. They're heading for the lab. Copy that, Moreno replied. She unslung her rifle, nodding to Volkov. Seal this room, and don't open it for anyone but me. I'll hold them off. Volkov hesitated. You can't fight them alone. I'm not alone, Moreno said, tapping her comm. Moreno to all available units. Converge on the lab. We hold this line. The fight for the core. In the dim, flickering corridors outside the lab, Moreno and her hastily assembled squad set up a defensive position. The Dominion soldiers moved with calculated precision, their plasma weapons cutting through cover like paper. Human Marines returned fire, their Gauss rifles roaring, but for every alien they felled, more took their place. Moreno ducked behind a bulkhead as plasma bolts scorched the air around her. She glanced at her squad, their faces grim but determined. Hold the line, she shouted. They don't get past us. The Dominion forces pressed forward, their chittering war cries echoing through the corridors. One of the Marines fell, a plasma bolt piercing his chest, but the humans held their ground. Moreno fired burst after burst, her rifle growing hot in her hands. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the corridor. A Dominion soldier had deployed a breaching charge, and the blast sent Moreno sprawling. Her vision blurred as she struggled to rise, her ears ringing. Through the haze, she saw the aliens advancing toward the lab door. Fall back, she barked, pulling herself to her feet. Regroup at the lab. Sacrifice and resolve. Inside the lab, Volkov watched in horror as the Dominion soldiers neared. She activated the containment locks, but the core's energy began to overwhelm the system. Akrail stepped forward, its form shimmering. Your time is up, human. Not yet, Volkov muttered, her fingers flying over the console. She activated the intercom. Grant, the core is becoming unstable. If we don't act now. I know, Grant's voice replied. Hold your position. I'm coming. Moments later, the lab doors burst open, but it wasn't Dominion soldiers who entered. It was Grant, flanked by reinforcements. His rifle snapped up, taking down an alien soldier that had breached the perimeter. Status report, he demanded. The core's containment is at critical failure, Volkov said. We either activate the failsafe, or we all die, Grant finished grimly. He turned to Moreno, who stumbled into the lab, blood streaking her face. Captain, what's the situation outside? Bad, Moreno replied. Dominion reinforcements are pouring in. We're outnumbered and outgunned. Grant's jaw tightened. He looked at the core, its pulsing light almost too bright to bear. We don't have a choice. The failsafe. Volkov's fingers hovered over the failsafe controls. Commander, once I activate this, there's no going back. Grant placed a hand on her shoulder. Do it. Volkov nodded, her hand trembling as she entered the final sequence. Alarms blared, and a voice echoed through the ship. Failsafe activated. Detonation in 3 minutes. Akrail stepped toward the core, its form glowing brighter. You have chosen wisely. I will ensure the Harbinger remains bound. What does that mean? Grant asked. But Akrail did not answer. Instead, it stepped into the core itself, merging with the swirling energy. The room filled with light as the symbols on the core flared, locking into place. The ship trembled, the countdown ticking ever closer to zero. The final stand. Outside the lab, Dominion forces surged forward, desperate to reclaim the core. Moreno and the remaining Marines fought with everything they had, buying precious seconds. The corridors were a cacophony of gunfire, screams, and explosions. "Fall back to the dropships," Grant ordered over the comms. "Get everyone out." Volkov hesitated. "What about the core?" Grant gripped her arm. "It's done. We can't save the ship, but we can save the people." The surviving crew rushed to the escape pods and dropships as the countdown reached its final moments. The Dominion forces, realizing their defeat, began to retreat, but for many it was too late. As the last human dropship cleared the Resolute, the core reached critical mass. A blinding explosion erupted, consuming the ship and the surrounding Dominion vessels. The shockwave rippled through space, leaving only silence in its wake. Humanity endures. Aboard the evacuation fleet, Grant watched from a viewport as the explosion faded. The cost had been immense, lives lost, the Resolute destroyed, but the Harbinger was contained. For now. Volkov approached him, her face pale but resolute. "We stopped it, Commander. But for how long?" Grant's gaze hardened. "Long enough to prepare. If the Dominion comes back, or if something worse does, we'll be ready." Humanity had survived another day, but the war was far from over. As the fleet turned toward Earth, a quiet determination settled over the survivors. They would fight, adapt, and endure, for that was what it meant to be human.